Okay, so in this lesson we're going to have a brainstorm talking about some of the adjectives or describing words that we can use to talk about musical sounds. All of the sounds that we hear in the world around us are very different and have different characteristics, so it's really good to be able to talk about them. I suppose one place we could start is to think about the length of sounds that we're hearing, whether they're long or short. Think about a tap dripping, for example. That is a very short and spiky sound. As you'll know, if you've ever been lying in bed at night hearing a tap dripping somewhere off in the kitchen, you'll know that the sounds of the drips are not continuous, they're very short and spiky and they have lots of space in between. So if I was to try and play a melody that had a similar characteristic, I'd probably play something like this. You can hear there's lots of space in between each of the notes of my melody. What would the opposite of that be? Well, that would probably be something that was long, smooth, and joined up. If I was to try and play a melody that was long, smooth, and joined up, it might sound something like this. You'll notice there was no gaps at all between any of the notes. They all flowed smoothly into one another. Depending on what instruments we use, we're going to get very, very different sounds in our music. Imagine the piano, for example. The piano is an instrument that makes it sound by taking a hammer and hitting it against a string. You can hear it there. Now, while the start of the note is very, very strong, what you'll hear is very quickly we start to hear the sound of the note dying away. And actually, it's almost gone. The piano is a type of sound that we might say is a decaying sound. Meaning that when the sound has started, it's already starting to die away. Let's hear it one more time. Very strong start, but even within a couple of seconds, we can hear that the note is starting to die away. Now, the opposite of that would be something where the note is very, very sustained, and there are some instruments that are excellent at producing sustained sounds. I'm sure you can think of a few. A really good one is the violin, for example. The violin played with the bow, of course, and as the player moves the bow across the string, they can just keep changing the bow. They can move the bow in opposite directions and play a note for as long as they want to. It'll never decay away. And the organ is a very similar instrument. Because it has an unlimited power of air that we can send through the pipes of the organ, we can get a sound that lasts as long as we want to without any decay. Here's an organ note, for example. Now, as long as I keep my hand on the key and the key pressed, we'll just keep hearing that sound. It'll never decay. So that's an example of a sustained sound. Other words that I could think of might include heavy sounds. Imagine a very big bass drum. That's got a very, very heavy character to it. And opposite might be a flute, which has a very light sound where there isn't a huge amount of attack to every note. It's just a very light and flowing kind of instrument. So what am I getting at here? Well, actually, I've been trying to get you to think about the idea of musical articulation. Articulation comes from speech, and sometimes we talk about when we articulate our sounds very strongly, which means we put a very heavy emphasis on them all. And articulation in music is very, very similar. Sometimes we want to make our sounds very short and spiky. Other times we want to make them sound very smooth and joined up. And even though some instruments have particular characteristics, like they have a strong decay or they're very, very sustained, we can use any instrument to produce different articulations and different characteristics of sound. And that's what we're going to have a look at in the next few videos.